This is White Plains Week, the weekly roundup of White Plains, Westchester, and world news. With John Bailey, editor and publisher of the daily internet newspaper White Plains Citizen Net Reporter, WPCNR.com. Jim Benneroff, editor and publisher of SuburbanStreet.com and WhitePlains.com. And me, Peter Katz, formerly with NBC, ABC News, and stations from Boston to Los Angeles. White Plains Week, what's happening, who are the newsmakers, what's in store for the future. The views and opinions expressed on this program are solely those of the participants. White Plains Week is presented on Optimum Cable Channel 76, Verizon Fios Channel 45, and on the internet at whiteplainsweek.com, youtube.com, and wpcommunitymedia.org. Now, White Plains Week.
Good evening, Mr. and Mrs. White Plains, Westchester, and the world. John Bailey, the Citizen Net reporter, back from the far west after being away for a week. Good to be back, and I'm welcoming Peter Katz, the anchor for Seasons, and Jim Benneroff is on assignment tonight. And now the headlines. The judge rules Milagros Lacuna can run for mayor in the September 12th Democratic primary. Also, the judge approves Alan Goldman, Michael Craver, and Saad Siddiqui signatures, allowing them to run also. So far, as of Friday morning when we were taping this White Plains Week, there is no appeal of the judge's decision filed. But you never can tell. Fridays are days when things happen. And Harrison breaks ground on new apartments on Westchester Avenue, signaling a new trend, which, oddly enough, Pierre, echoes a trend that is happening big time in Vancouver, British Columbia, where I was yesterday. And Harrison breaks ground, and Peter Katz, you're going to bring us up to date on a most important Trump the president. And a mayoral debate is slated for August 22nd at the Women's Club, and we will see if the Democratic Party designated candidates appear for this debate. And later on in this program, I'll take you around Alaska in 3 minutes. That'll be a trick. So, generally...
If you walk fast, you can do that.
Speaking of walking, I just wanted to show you this picture of Skagway. Now, Skagway is the embarkation point for the Yukon Territory when the gold rush was on in 1897. And when the miners, hoping to strike it rich, arrived in Skagway, this is what faced them. They had to walk over that mountain range.
Well, you're not going to have to walk too far to get over the Tappan Zee Bridge. No. At least, based upon what was announced in White Plains this week. There was a news conference down at the train station. It was staged by Assemblyman David Buchwald, who brought down the Assembly Speaker and some other officials. And what they announced was that they're planning to have the state put up $13.5 million to finally put together the Tappan Zee Rapid Transit that has been talked about, a bus line running across the Tappan Zee. There will be stops in White Plains. There will be service out to Westchester Avenue. And we had been asking on this program what was happening with this idea.
For the last 5 years we've been asking that question.
So they appear to be starting to make this somewhat of a reality. The bridge itself is due to open August 25th, and that is just around the corner as we're recording this program.
And this will be the first big test.
It'll be a partial opening. It is just one of the 2 bridges that compose the new Mario Cuomo Bridge, which will be open for traffic. And after that, eventually, they will tear down the old Tappan Zee Bridge. They will build the completion portion of the second Tappan Zee Bridge, then we will see whether indeed the Tappan Zee Bridge reconstruction eliminates the legendary traffic jams which many commuters see on a daily basis.
Well, I hope it does, because pure physics would indicate that it will not. When you see the extremely inclined S-curve going up on the new bridge and the inclined S-curve careening down into the toll plaza, which no longer exists because it's overhead gantries, and then coming to a dead halt at the merge onto 287.
But you know, one thing that's sure to happen with this new bus service that they announced that they're moving forward with is that it just may tie in with the changes we're starting to see take place now on Westchester Avenue. You know, it had been for a long time a place solely for office parks. In fact, it was called the Platinum Mile because of all of the highfalutin corporations that were there. But you know, a while back, White Plains put in place new regulations which would allow a mix in the types of development along its section of Westchester Avenue where the office parks have dominated. But in terms of a change from offices to residential and retail, Harrison has beaten White Plains to the punch by approving a massive apartment development and a new Wegmans supermarket. Ground was broken for the Toll Brothers apartment project just a few days ago.
A tent was set up at 103 and 105 Corporate Park Drive in Harrison on August 15th, just in case the overcast skies became rainy during the official groundbreaking ceremony for a 421-unit apartment building on a 10-acre former office park site being repurposed for residential use by Toll Brothers. Among the speakers was Westchester County Executive Rob Astorino.
The investment is being seen all over the place, not only here with the Caraway, which is going to be a major part of a redevelopment here in Harrison. And I want to thank the town of Harrison for what they are doing in this county. They are moving projects along in a responsible way, but moving them along. And we can see what's happening.
Then it was time for local officials and those involved in the development to pick up the ceremonial shovels for the usual ceremonial tossing of shovelfuls of soil. But this groundbreaking became unusual when, on cue, a member of the wrecking crew from Capital Industries Corporation, which has been demolishing the office park, fired up an excavator. The building will have a mix of studios, one-bedroom and two-bedroom apartments, with 10% of the rental units set aside as affordable housing. The Caraway is expected to be ready for occupancy by the fall of 2019. Brian Oos is with Toll Brothers.
So I'm part of the Toll Brothers apartment living division, which is building this project here. We are the rental apartment division of Toll Brothers. Toll is a publicly traded company that celebrated its 50th anniversary this year. Our rental operations are relatively new in comparison, but are certainly a rapidly growing element of our business, and one that we're in the process of rolling out nationally. Currently, we have a presence from DC through Boston, through our apartment living division, and also have offices in Atlanta, Dallas, in Southern and Northern California, and are looking at other expansion markets as well.
Harrison's mayor is Ron Belmont.
This was a long time in the making. It's close to 6 years from the initial concept or idea I had. We took it to some developers and contractors. We started this. We had a luncheon at one of our Harrison restaurants. We brought in developers, engineers, traffic consultants, just to say, you know, Harrison is open for business. Let's see what we can do in the future. And repurposing Westchester Avenue, our former Platinum Mile, was the main intent, to try to neutralize or take the tax burden off the residents of town. At one time, Westchester Avenue and our office parks controlled about 65% of the tax base, and the residents were paying 35%. Over the years, that switched to residents 65 and the corporates 35. So now we're trying to bring that back, try to give a balance and a break to our residents, our taxpayers. So we're excited about this. We're excited about Wegmans coming in. Memorial Sloan Kettering is a big asset to the town as well, right up the street here. So we're moving. You know, it's a slow process, but we're moving. We're taking the local rather than the express.
You know, I can just hear development coming up as a major issue in the campaigns right here in White Plains, also throughout Westchester. We have Rob Astorino who's going to run again, and actually his opponent on the Democratic side is yet really to be decided. George Latimer got the city committee's endorsement, but Ken Jenkins, the legislator, who had threatened a primary against Latimer, appears to be going full steam with that. I got something in the mail, a lot of other people did too, this week, a mailer from Ken Jenkins, and interestingly, they're trying to tie Rob Astorino on the left in with you-know-who on the right, figuring that that may be one way to tarnish the image of Astorino.
And it really means that Jenkins is running a serious campaign, not dropping out. It's a very nicely produced brochure, some really good photography of Mr. Jenkins.
Yeah, I mean, it's a classy-looking mailing piece. Now, right here in White Plains in the primary, we found out this week that a judge has approved the petitions that were challenged, petitions from Milagros Laquona and 3 others who were not selected for the Democratic City Committee's nominations for mayor and common council, who want to primary Mayor Roach and the Democratic City Committee's candidates. So the judge said, yeah, these petitions are okay. There's nothing wrong with the signatures.
There's the last page of the decision.
Republicans, or actually the city committee had challenged it, and so the Republicans now will be putting forward their slate of candidates. They did some announcements a couple of weeks ago as to who they want, so they'll have to get them on the ballot. So in November, we're sure to see something interesting. In September, at primary time, we're sure to see something interesting too. In fact, John, as you mentioned in the headlines, there will be a mayoral debate at the Women's Club featuring the mayoral candidates, we believe, and perhaps the
common council
people
contenders.
Also. So there you go.
Right.
Politics season is here.
Yes. Now the judge in this paragraph states, the mayoral candidate Milagros Laquona had 878 valid signatures without considering the 508 WP signatures, one of the primary contentions of the Democratic
Instead of writing out
challengers.
White Plains, when people filled in their addresses, they put WP for White Plains instead of saying WHITEPLINS.
The judge writes, when they are included, it increases the total for Milagros Laquona to 1,386 valid signatures. The Common Council candidates, Michael Craver, Saad Siddiqui, and Alan Goldman, have 960 signatures without considering the 84 WP signatures, which, when added in, total 1,044 valid signatures. By stipulation of the parties, each candidate required 912 valid signatures. And he threw out the idea that because they amended the cover sheets on the petitions, that was not going to invalidate all the work that was going to be done, and there was only about 6 disputed signatures. So this was a lot of intriguing stuff.
Well, you know,
I want to ask something though.
The fact of the matter is, in local politics especially, disputing signatures on petitions is common. You see that in just about every election, or so it seems. You know, where one party will say the petitions for this candidate are not proper, and therefore we would like the candidate's name kept off the ballot.
What I want to know is, in the next election, could we challenge the signatures of the Democratic or Republican designated
Well, that's done. Very often the Republicans will challenge the Democratic candidates' petitions and vice versa. It happens. In fact, just this morning, someone had a newspaper clipping from 1999, a journal news story reporting on how the Republicans were challenging the petitions from Paul Feiner and a couple of other Democratic candidates who were running in local elections. So it happens all the time. So
yes, but
so there you are. Some unfortunately, in some cases, such things do not happen at the national level.
Unfortunately, they do not.
Sometimes there are candidates who you would like to challenge, which brings us to the favorite feature of the program.
Trump the president, or as we like to call it, the composite Trump, the pocket Trump.
You know, the thing is, there's so much going on these days at the national level that it's difficult to keep track of everything unless it can be consolidated. So we're trying to consolidate it. Let me see if I can consolidate all of this as quickly as we can. Republican Senator Bob Corker of Tennessee says President Trump lacks the stability and competence to be president. Republican Corker says Trump's presidency is a great peril, his words, great peril for the United States. Tony Schwartz, who wrote the book The Art of the Deal. I think you read that, didn't you, John? Or you were going to read it?
I ignore
the Deal,
self-promoting books.
Which Donald Trump took credit for writing, predicted in an interview on CNN that Trump will resign before the end of the year. The president, vice president, their top aides are considering giving $10 billion a year to the brother of Education Secretary Betsy DeVos to take over the war in Afghanistan. The top 5 U.S. military leaders have
Wait a minute. What does he know about that?
They're considering, well, what he knows is that he established the mercenary group called Blackwater.
Oh, I see. So he does know something about it.
He does know something about it. But the idea of privatizing a war is something somewhat new. I mean, you do see cases where mercenaries are hired to go fight by various governments.
Well, we have a paid military.
That's never happened in the U.S. Right. The top 5 U.S. military leaders have broken with Trump over his praise of Nazis and other racists. President Trump had been vacationing at his golf club in Bedminster, New Jersey, then went back to Washington on Monday, where he read a statement criticizing the Nazis, the Klan, and the other white supremacists who started the violence in Charlottesville, Virginia over the weekend, where there were 3 deaths and dozens of injuries. And I'm sure you're familiar with what happened in Charlottesville. Trump obviously was reading from a teleprompter because in his statement he expressed no emotion or sincerity. Then he went on to Trump Tower in Manhattan. There were round-the-clock protesters outside of Trump Tower on Tuesday afternoon, flanked by Treasury Secretary Steve Mnuchin and Transportation Secretary Chow, who is Senate Republican leader Mitch McConnell's wife. He backed off Monday's statement and defended the Nazis, the Klan, and other white supremacists by mischaracterizing what they were demonstrating for, which was white supremacy, eliminating Jews, and reviving slavery, and equated them with the people who showed up to protest what the Nazis, Klan members, and other white supremacists were doing.
I've condemned many different groups, but not all of those people were neo-Nazis, believe me. Not all of those people were white supremacists by any stretch. Those people were also there because they wanted to protest the taking down of a statue, Robert E. Lee. So, excuse me, and you take a look at some of the groups and you see, and you know it if you were honest reporters, which in many cases you're not, but many of those people were there to protest the taking down of the statue of Robert E. Lee. So, this week it's Robert E. Lee. I noticed that Stonewall Jackson's coming down. I wonder, is it George Washington next week, and is it Thomas Jefferson the week after? You know, you really do have to ask yourself, where does it stop?
President, are you putting what you're calling the alt-left and white supremacists on the same moral plane?
I'm not putting anybody on a moral plane. What I'm saying is this. You had a group on one side and you had a group on the other, and they came at each other with clubs, and it was vicious, and it was horrible, and it was a horrible thing to watch. but there is another side. There was a group on this side, you can call them the left, or you've just called them the left, that came violently attacking the other group. So you can say what you want, but that's the way it is.
On both sides, sir, you said there was hatred, there was violence on both sides.
Well, I do think there's blame. Yes, I think there's blame on both sides. You look at both sides. I think there's blame on both sides, and I have no doubt about it, and you don't have any doubt about it either. And if you reported it accurately, you would say.
Neo-Nazis started this. They showed up in Charlottesville. They showed up in Charlottesville to protest.
Excuse me. They didn't put themselves down as neo, and you had some very bad people in that group. But you also had people that were very fine people on both sides. You had people in that group, excuse me, I saw the same pictures as you did. You had people in that group that were there to protest the taking down of, to them, a very, very important statue and the renaming of a park from Robert E. Lee to another name. Does anyone know I own a house in Charlottesville?
Where is it?
Oh, boy, it's going to be, it's in Charlottesville, you'll see.
Is it near the winery or something?
It is the winery.
Will you go to visit and try to
I mean, I know a lot about Charlottesville. Charlottesville is a great place that's been very badly hurt over the last couple of days. But I own actually one of the largest wineries in the States. It's in Charlottesville.
Now, John,
It's
the videotape shows that what Trump was saying was absolutely not true.
really.
And despite what he says, the soundtrack of the video of the Nazis' nighttime torchlight march in Charlottesville proves that they were not chanting about a statue of Robert E. Lee. They were chanting about eliminating Jews and immigrants and about the superiority of the white race. Also, the videos, and there were lots of videos, show that it was the Nazis and the white supremacists who attacked first. The other side was not attacking, they were defending themselves.
Yes.
And there also were criticisms raised of the police for not intervening early enough to stop this.
You know, that is a very big issue.
And it was not
Police
it was
interfering,
not
yeah.
someone from the left who got into a car and mowed down people in the crowd. It was someone who was photographed with the Nazis and white supremacists carrying their gear and wearing their garb. President Trump also was lying about the Trump Winery in Charlottesville. It is nowhere near the largest winery in the United States. Wineries are rated on output as measured in cases, and the Trump Winery produces about 36,000 cases per year, making it one of the smallest wineries in the United States. It also ranks at the bottom of wineries in Virginia. Trump said he owned it, but according to the Trump Winery website, and let me quote, the Trump Winery website itself actually says, quote, Trump Winery is a registered trade name of Eric Trump Wine Manufacturing, LLC, which is not owned, managed, or affiliated with Donald J. Trump, the Trump Organization, or any of their affiliates.
I see. So, who is this Eric Trump then?
It's his son.
Just wanted to clear that up.
Trump's lawyer, John Dowd, was found to have sent around an email comparing Confederate General Robert E. Lee with America's first president, George Washington. The email was written by someone else and forwarded by Dowd to friends and colleagues, according to the New York Times, whose reporter was given a copy. Excuse me. Some Republicans have expressed their disgust with Trump over his position on the Nazis, while others are just wringing their hands and saying they can't explain it. Well, there could be a very simple explanation. Months ago on this program, we reported how the Trump campaign was following step by step what Hitler had written in his book Mein Kampf. Now the Trump administration has been restructuring the court systems, denigrating Congress, doing what Hitler did in his first months and years in office.
Attacking the press.
Attacking the press, creating the own propaganda machine. Now something really, really interesting has surfaced for a lengthy Trump profile published in Vanity Fair magazine. On September 1st, 1990, Marie Brenner interviewed both Donald Trump and Ivana Trump. Now let me quote from the article. Here we go. Ready? Quote, Donald Trump appears to take aspects of his German background seriously. John Walter, who's a cousin of Trump, works for the Trump Organization. And when he visits Donald in his office, Ivana told a friend, he clicks his heels and says, Heil Hitler. Last April, Ivana Trump told her lawyer, Michael Kennedy, that from time to time, her husband, Donald, reads a book of Hitler's collected speeches, My New Order, which he keeps in a cabinet by his bed. Kennedy now guards a copy of My New Order in a closet in his office as if it were a grenade. Hitler's speeches from his earliest days up through the phony war of 1939 reveal his extraordinary ability as a master propagandist. Quote, did your cousin John give you the Hitler speeches? The writer Brenner asked Trump. Trump hesitated, and then he said, who told you that?
Oh, so he's got one of the master writers.
I think we now need to completely change the subject and cleanse our minds with some pictures you brought back from Alaska, which are breathtaking in a very different way.
Right. The first shot you will see is the Hubbard Glacier, the largest glacier in the world. This video does not do it justice because it does not give you the three-dimensional effect. And as we zoom in, you see that the Hubbard Glacier comes and wraps around in ice. It goes back 75 miles, all the way back. And that is an eagle. There you can see the white head of this great bird, a lone eagle. That was my only eagle sighting in flight, but it stood out. This is the Quechuan Glacier, our last stop. And what happens, you usually see some of the holes in the glacier at the base there, and that's where ice falls off into the waters. And it's basically, that hole is about 100 feet to 200 feet high that was carved out. And then it glides on back up on the ice field. This is billions of years old. And there we see it again. And in fact, when you see a cruise ship against it, it looks like a rowboat. That's how big this is. And you see the hand of God has left its mark. And this is the Quechuan Glacier. That's a waterfall coming down from the mountains on the right. And of course it's lunchtime in Quechuan in the rainforest. And we caught a bear at one of his favorite spots, the Salmon Cafe, alongside the tidal estuaries. And as you can see, he's occasionally bothered by seagulls and ravens hoping to get the leftovers. There's one in the bottom of the shot right now. The bear is saying, hey, can't you see I'm eating lunch here? Great bear, it's about 2 years old, very strong arms, and it was our only sighting of the bear. We also saw one whale, which blew for us, and also some sea otters. But the pristine nature of this land is astounding. I hardly recommend the tour. Well, that's about it for us on White Plains Week. John Bailey, Peter Katz, good night for White Plains Week.
This has been White Plains Week, news and commentary about White Plains, Westchester, and the world. The views and opinions expressed on this program were solely those of the participants. White Plains Week, produced by White Plains Citizen Net reporter and presented on Optimum Cable Channel 76 and Verizon Fios Channel 45. You may view White Plains Week anytime on the internet at whiteplainsweek.com, youtube.com, and wpcommunitymedia.org. For White Plains Week, this is Peter Katz speaking.